in the 1920s. And it's in a church, obviously, and there's the Klan, a white supremacist, racist organization in the church being endorsed by the pastor who is in the pulpit. That's crazy. That's disturbing. Anyway, that's obvious also. So let's just press in a little bit. 2 questions. What is the doctrine of that church? 2, what is the culture of that church? I look at the photograph and I see the banner, Jesus Saves, so I know the doctrine. I agree with that doctrine. I'm going to guess you do too. Then I ask, what's the culture of that church? White supremacy. What is it that this tragic church does not perceive? There's a blind spot here. They do not see the disconnect. They do not see their doctrine says Jesus saves. Their culture says Jesus saves if you're white. They honestly don't see the disconnect. They do not see that they are destroying their own message. They are unsaying by their culture what they are saying by their doctrine. I'm going to guess that I could go to that church and on a typical Sunday, I might agree with every word in the sermon, and I would never go back to that wretched church. Churches are communicating at these 2 levels all the time. When there's a disconnect, it's the doctrine, the message, the Bible that loses. When the culture submits to, is sweetened by, beautified by that very gospel, then the culture of the church validates that message, embodies that message, makes that message visible and desirable and credible. And human aspirations, people who don't believe the doctrine, can't unsee the beauty. And so that opens a door to the doctrine. So this photograph was important to me as I was thinking these things through because it just made the issue so blatantly obvious. That was really helpful. It's disturbing, and that's why it's helpful. Okay, thank you for that. So you can just look this over at your convenience if it's of interest to you. Maybe this would help with leaders at your church. But here's one recommendation, and I found this really helped me as a pastor. On page 4, asking the how-to question. Down at the bottom of the page, 4.3. Conduct your services as a total experience of gospel reassurance in the Lord, requiring of everything throughout the service, not just the sermon, but everything throughout the service, that it communicates the beauty and gentleness and shalom of a gospel culture. So on the next page, page 5, at the top of the page, I have the call to worship that I used and is used to this day at Emmanuel Church in Nashville. And I stole it from the homepage of the website of 10th Presbyterian Church in Philadelphia, which is a PCA church. It's not on their website anymore, but when I saw it, I just thought, this is gold. So what I do is I get up there and I start the service. I do not say, I don't even say welcome to church. I certainly don't give a pep talk. I definitely do not chew the people out for not singing loud enough. Now, come on, people, let's get with it. When I hear that from the front, I want to scream and run out the back door. So I just stand there and I ask the Lord for his blessing and power. And I just say, I'll look the people right in the eye. And in a calm, fatherly way, I just say this. To all who are weary and need rest. And I don't know about y'all here, but in America, we're all exhausted all the time. So right then, people are leaning in, yeah. To all who mourn and long for comfort. To all who feel worthless and wonder if God cares. To all who fail and desire strength. I say it more slowly and I don't become histrionic, but there is a kind of, this deserves to be said with fatherly eloquence and intentionality. I'm looking the people in the eye. Sometimes I get so emotional, I have to ask the Lord for the capacity to hold it together when I'm saying this, because I know what so many of them are going through. A friend of mine, a guy in the church said, he risked getting a speeding ticket driving to church because he was late and he wanted to hear this. To all who sin and need a Savior. This church opens wide her doors with a welcome from Jesus Christ, the ally of his enemies, the defender of the guilty, the justifier of the inexcusable, the friend of sinners. Welcome. Now, what that does is that sets a gospel tone from the first moment. It's not as though we do a bunch of stuff and then the sermon preaches the gospel. We start with the gospel. We continue with the gospel. We end with the gospel. Because that church doesn't exist for anything else. And if we allow other agendas, other purposes, and other messages to come in, well, who gave us the right? But when we front load the gospel with personal sincerity and tenderness and theological legitimacy and biblical orthodoxy, and it's coming through brokenhearted people, through brokenhearted people to brokenhearted people, great things happen. So anyway, this paper is my feeble attempt to open up doors, to kind of rethink ministry and dare to do some new things. So that's what that's about. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
No extra charge.
Thank you. That was helpful. I believe these people would like to get to know maybe you a bit more.
They don't want to get to know me.
And then we'll throw the floor open for, because they're in some shape or form, they're in some form of ministry leadership. And we'd love to give them the opportunity to ask you questions. But tell us just your story from boyhood to who you are now, how you met your wife,
Okay.
all that sort of stuff. Tell us your story.
Okay. My dad was the greatest man I've ever known. He was a real deal Christian. My dad, okay, here's a story about my dad.
Go for it.
He was a busy pastor, and he took Mondays off. And when he wasn't satisfied that he'd had enough time with his son, he would come to me on a Sunday night and say, "Bud, you want to skip school tomorrow? Go down to the beach?" This was in Los Angeles, right? Southern California. I said, "Heck yeah, we're out of here." So he would take me out of school. I wouldn't even go, and let me skip, play hooky. And we go down to the beach and body surf and take walks and throw the football and just have fun. And then Tuesday morning, he would write a note that I would take to the school office, you know. I felt I hadn't had enough time with my son, so I took him out of school. We went to the beach. Please excuse his absence. And they would always mark it unexcused absence. Dad didn't care, and I didn't care. I knew my dad loved me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he was the preacher up in the pulpit. And I knew he was utterly, profoundly sincere. Yeah. So I had a great day.
Did you have any other siblings? Any other?
Oh, I have one brother and two sisters, and they're just fantastic. I met my wife at 5 p.m. on September 12th, 1968.
Where?
On the campus of Wheaton College near Chicago. I was minding my own business. I was walking from my dorm to the dining hall. I was hungry. And I was walking past the gym. And there was a guy I'd met a few days before. And I wanted to say hi to him on my way to dinner. So I diverted my path over his way. And by the time I get there, there was this really cute girl standing there.
Do you remember the first thing you said to her?
Yes, and I'm so embarrassed, I'm not going to tell you what it was.
So what?
No, yes. I have some self-respect left. Well, I mean, She was from Minnesota. I was from California, but God brought us together in Illinois, and I just fell crazy in love.
From the first moment?
Oh, not the first moment, but boy, it didn't take long.
Oh, okay.
And I heard through the grapevine, here was this absolutely gorgeous woman who was a devout Christian. And that's when I decided to call her up and ask her out. To my amazement, she said yes. Here we are. Let's see, December 18th, it'll be 53 years.
Wow. Congratulations. Wow.
Thank you. I'm so grateful. 4 children.
Tell us about your children.
Oh, gosh. I love my kids. I love my sons. I adore my daughter. Oh, gosh. But they're all great. And now we have 15 grandchildren. Yeah. And last year, a year ago right now, we had a big family gathering in Nashville to celebrate what had been it was delayed. It was meant to celebrate our 50th anniversary. And Jenny and I paid for everything, got everybody here. It was a blast. We had it at the Opryland Resort near Nashville. And, they have a water park and great food and cool things. So we had a whole room to ourselves, and I gave each one of my grandchildren, and each one of my grandsons, and Janny gave to each one of our granddaughters one of our Bibles. Because we like to do an annual Bible read-through. Oh. And so over the years, we just had this whole shelf full of marked up Bibles. And so we gave one to each of our grandchildren with one verse that we wanted to impart to that. Because we wanted our grandchildren to know that following Jesus, we follow Jesus through being fed by and devoted to his word. And you know who got me doing that? Oh, I didn't bring my phone with me, but I have it in my mind. My dad, on my 17th birthday, gave me a new Bible. And here's what he wrote inside the front of it. He said, "Dear Bud, your mother and I have found this book, capital B, to be our dearest treasure. And giving it to you can give nothing greater." I choke up when I think about this. "Be a student of the Bible, and your life will be full of blessing. We love you, Dad." Philippians 1:6.
Wow.
And you know Philippians 1:6. For of this I am sure, that he who began a good work in you will bring it to completion by the day of Jesus Christ. And that, I needed to know that, because I love the Lord in a way, but I was a total knucklehead. I was, what I was excited about was not going to church on Sunday. I was excited about the latest Beach Boys hit, and playing football with my friends on Saturday night, and there's nothing wrong with all that.
Yeah.
But that was my whole emotional structure was built around legitimate but secondary things. And that's the essence of folly. And Dad discerned down deep inside all that complication, this little seed of love for Christ. And that's what he noticed, not all the complication and foolishness.
Wow.
So he spoke to that and encouraged me. Amazing.
So God give you a blessing of a father.
Yeah, and so I wanted my grandchildren to have that, something like that experience.
So from the time that your father spotted that seed, you were about 17, to the point where you felt the Lord's call in your life quite strongly. What was that journey?
Yeah, thank you. When I was at university, was Campus Crusade ever part of your world? Okay. Campus Crusade guys got a hold of me. They got me involved in the first sort of systematic Bible study I was doing. They got me involved in campus evangelism and campus discipleship over the course of one semester, one term. And I had never been involved in anything like that before, and it was captivating to me. And God made it captivating. It was my moment. And I came to realize, God's people have so many different callings, and every single one is legitimate and sacred. But I'm looking at this thing called ministry, and I'm thinking I want to hurl myself into this. I was just captivated by it. So I wrote a letter to the leaders of our church at home, and I explained, I'm beginning to wonder if I'm called to ministry. They responded as just wise men of God, fathers in the church. One of them took me under his wing, and for the next 7 years, paid attention to me when I wasn't paying attention, and walked with me through to the point of ordination. So his name was Glenn Dawson. Dawson's bookstore in downtown Los Angeles was a world-class, rare, and antique bookstore. And that was his business. And he was so gentle and attentive and kind. And there were 2 guys ordained at our church that summer. John Piper was one of them. This precious man that the world has never heard of, Glenn Dawson, walked with John Piper to ordination too. And so we owe. You are the heroes of this time. And you don't need to be adored like Taylor Swift. Yeah. You are historically consequential. Your life matters. This world has no idea who you really are and what you're really worth. So we don't listen to this tragic, uncomprehending world. We love them, we respect them, but they don't define us, right? And they're not going to control our morale. And so it's one of the great things about getting togethers like this is to look at each other and say, you're not crazy. Okay, you might feel crazy for loving Jesus and putting him first. This world makes it feel crazy. You're not crazy, and neither am I. Let's keep going. You guys are awesome.
So Glenn Dawson,
Yeah.
he helped you through your ordination. Give us your pathway from there and right up to your ministry, the founding of Renewal Ministries and all that sort of journey.
So here's my Bible. And I open up the front, and there's a document in here that I keep in my Bible. It's the prayer of Dr. James Henry Hutchins at the ordination of Ray Ortlund Jr., Lake Avenue Congregational Church, Pasadena, California, September 14th, 1975. He prayed for 8 minutes. You know, at the time, he was an elderly gentleman, spoke with sort of King James Version English and so forth. And I'm sorry to admit, at the time, I did not revere adequately what was pouring out of him. Boy, I do now. Because in God's mercy, I actually have on my phone audio of my ordination in 1975. How crazy is that? And I keep this with me because I don't want to let him down. I have a photograph of the guys who surrounded me at the front of the church and put their hands on me as I was ordained. By God's grace for his glory, I'm not going to make them regret that. I owe them big time. We live in covenantal solidarity together. How I live and die at some level matters to every Christian on the face of the earth in this generation, and so do you. How you live and die matters to me over in Nashville, Tennessee, because God has woven us together in this glorious covenantal tapestry. I need you to go the distance with integrity because you're contributing to the whole tone of Christianity in this generation. So am I. We're in this together, guys. Let's keep going.
And as you've kept going, what has been, let's speak to some of the joys in that ministry and some of your key struggles.
Yeah.
And then we're going to open up to the floor.
Sure. In God's mercy, The most joyous and downright fun season of ministry I ever had was my final pastorate. The last 11 years there at Nashville, at Emmanuel Church in Nashville. Wonderfully, mercifully, the church began in brokenheartedness. I can't answer the first question without answering the second question a little bit too. And this is hard to talk about.
Okay.
I was at a church in Nashville that I just absolutely adored, and I got thrown out. There was a group of people in the church that didn't want me, and they succeeded in their purpose of getting rid of me. And it was done in a way that was brutal. And I left. I was hallucinating at night. I mean, something happened at a primal level of my being. Things were said and things were done that injured a deep level of my being. I'd always been an Olympic champion sleeper, and then 2 or 3 times a week, I would wake up in the middle of the night seeing intruders coming into our bedroom, like through the ceiling or through a crack in the wall that isn't there. And they would be, for 15 or 20 seconds, as real to me as you are right now. That's crazy. I know that's crazy.
It sounds like trauma.
It does. And I might throw myself on my wife to protect her from these guys. So it's crazy. And nobody knew that drama was going on. And I would, anxiety, hyper vigilance, I think is the phrase, that was kicking in. There was a whole lot of bad stuff going on. And I got asked to plant a church in the middle of that. Now, don't ever do that. Don't do what I did, okay? But in a way I don't need to detail, we were led with unmistakable clarity. Patiently, we did not rush into any decision. I did not want to do this. But patiently waiting on the Lord, we were led with striking clarity to do the improbable. So the church was, I said to the people repeatedly, any church born as a protest movement, any church born in anger will not bear fruit. If we do this, if we plant this church, we got to be the head cheerleaders for every Bible-believing church in town, whether they like us or not. We're going to love them, cheer for them, promote them, right? And everybody nodded. So that was very important. So we did it. We jumped in. When my son Gavin got his tonsils out and he came out of anesthesia, he asked for a piece of paper and he wrote, "It can only get better from here," which was really profound. And that's how I felt.
Okay. And that then led into the most joyful time of ministry.
So God mercifully began this church, and it just grew slowly and gently. If it had really taken off, it would have crushed me. If it had died, it would have crushed me. God just said, "Okay, I've got this." And it just, and the heartache with which that many of us were sharing actually was a perfect way to start a church. Because here's the deal. In Nashville, you have to be impressive. Nashville is a platform. Music City, USA. Everybody, we have our own local religion in Nashville. Our local religion, heaven in our local religion, is being on stage, performing magnificently and getting rave reviews. Hell in our local religion is not getting the record contract, and you end up working at Starbucks because there is so much musical talent in the city. Now, in a city that's performing all the time, on stage all the time, you always have to be amazing. because everybody's amazing. You won't break through it unless you're hyper amazing. That's Nashville. And it's part of the Christian culture. So we decided we're going to be, whatever amazing is, we're going to be the opposite.
And you felt you did pretty well on that.
I was great at that.
Yeah.
Which is why that call to worship is so meaningful. I mean, it's not even us, supreme beings and living the victorious Christian life, inviting, you underachievers into our world. We're all down here. And the only impressive person in this whole church is the risen Lord Jesus Christ. He's amazing. But this church is not about performance. Now, that didn't mean we do ministry sloppily. Sloppy's not okay. But human is very okay. Fallible is very okay. So, and we found that people really responded. Everybody's tired of performing. What if there's a place where you can go in town and you just walk in? You walk into this cloud of non-crisis. That feels like the presence of God. If the gospel is about somebody else's performance, then we can build a church ethos about his performance, not ours.
Renewal ministry. So that pastorate has ended, and you're now in a season where this is your main form of ministry, which is renewal ministry. Tell us how that came about and what is it?
My dad and mom actually handed this down to Jenny and me, and we feel unworthy. I mean, my dad and mom were amazing. They never knew it, but they were. And that was the great thing about it. But I feel small compared to them. But Renewal Ministries has a heart for revival, awakening, and renewal. Because we believe, in a world like this, people like us, everybody needs renewal. So here we are, we're weak people. All we want to do is bring hope. Do you guys ever, does the name David French ring a bell? David is a political writer for the New York Times. He's a neighbor, and he came over, he and his wife Nancy came over for dinner last fall. And I said to David, because I respect him, he's a very insightful man. I said, okay, I'm in my 70s now, David. I'd like your opinion on this. What do you think I should be imparting to the rising generations? What gift must I give? And he said, hope. That is a great answer. So Renewal Ministries is about hope in Christ. For ordinary people, fallible people, broken people, exhausted people, sinful people. The risen Christ above, I'm going to say this tonight, the risen Christ above right now at this moment at 4:39 in the afternoon, right now. He's not tired. He's having a good day. And he's not tired of you. And when you and I come to him for like the 19th time in a single day with yet more need, he's not looking at us and rolling his eyes and looking at his peripheral vision for an exit strategy. He's doing really well. And he's doing so well, he's got all kinds of time and heart for you. And when he sees you coming, he lights up. And if you come to him with empty hands and you have nothing to offer but your need, that's when he likes it the most. He loves to fill empty hands. From his fullness, we have all received grace upon grace. I was over visiting a friend in Hawaii, And he said an interesting thing. He said, here in Hawaii, because everything except pineapples has to be shipped over, he said, we live in an economy of scarcity. We're always wondering if the next ship is going to come and bring us what we need. Jesus is not running an economy of scarcity. From his fullness, we have all received grace upon grace.
My last question. You're in your 70s?
Yeah. This isn't funny anymore.
So my father's in that era, and we have, an acknowledgement and a recognition. Okay, we're in 70 years and 10.
Yeah.
We're in the winter season. Don't say that to be pessimistic,
No.
but the reality is, Revelation 22 verse 4a, they will see his face.
Yeah.
In this season of your life, nobody wants to die, like Paul, to live as Christ, to die as gain. In this season of your life, what excites you about that reality of seeing his face?
Yeah. That's a great question. I'm really struck by that. We don't talk about death often enough. I read somewhere, during the Victorian era, people talked about death a lot, and sex was the taboo subject. And we've flipped that. We never stopped talking about sex, but we are really threatened by death. We don't.
It's a reality.
Yeah.
We have to all face it.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping nothing happens, like live many, many days, okay?
Yeah.
Like my father, yeah. But it's what excites you about what's next.
Yeah. The longer I live, and there were times when I was never suicidal. I've never been that, but there were times when I was just tired of life. I would have been very happy to keel over. But more and more, I actually desire to live and bear fruit and take care of my wife and family and accomplish as much as I possibly can before I die, because I feel what I was so invested in. All of us didn't get here by ourselves. We were invested in, we were cared for, we were lifted up. Somebody believed in us, somebody valued us. And they imparted gospel glories to us before we were even asking for that. We didn't even have the categories to desire such things. And somebody cared. Well, I feel the privilege of that, the responsibility of that. I want to give back. I want to impart that now to others as much as I possibly can. But when I think about death, I think of that, and now I can't remember the chapter number. In Deuteronomy, near the end of Deuteronomy, when God comes to Moses and he says, I want you to go up on the mountain and die. That's a command God gave Moses.
Yeah.
Die and be gathered to your fathers. That's how he says it. God says that. So, what does that tell me? Tell us all. One, the day you die will not be you just defeated. It will not be you capitulating to the powers of death. It will be you obeying God. It will be your final, triumphant, perhaps most devout yielding up of yourself to God. You will be obeying God when you die. It's not defeat. It's like this huge high five win, right? So God says, die, and then be gathered to your fathers. Very interesting. I noticed a couple of years ago in the Apostles' Creed, in that third section, I believe in the Holy Spirit, and wouldn't you know, I can't even remember the Apostles' Creed right now. But 2 lines, I believe in the Holy Catholic Church. We know what that means and what it doesn't mean, so I won't go into it. I believe in the Holy Catholic Church and the communion of saints. That's a separate line. They're not the same. The Holy Catholic Church is an historic reality, this historic entity, God's people through time. That's an objective reality. The communion of saints is an ongoing experience. We're having it right now. This magic we're sharing in this room right now. This is the communion of saints. We come together, see each other face to face. Several times Paul says, I want to see your face. If the Apostle Paul lived today, he would not have a smartphone. He would have a basic flip phone, and he would be meeting constantly with friends in coffee shops. Because face to face is way better than texting. Be gathered to your fathers. When I go to be with the Lord, I will not go be with the Lord alone. I will be gathered to my fathers and my mothers, my brothers and sisters. This is very moving to me. So, maybe it'll go down like this. I walk into heaven, and there's the Lord, the risen Christ. He's got this huge grin on his face. And he says, maybe he's 15 feet away. Archangels there, whoa, bad dudes. And he says, would you like a hug? And I said, yeah, it sounds great, So he gives me this great big bear hug. And he says, I'm in no hurry. Take your time. And I'm feeling healing going way down into the depths of my being. I'm starting to feel human. I'm discovering what it feels like to be alive for the first time ever, fully alive. So, maybe I'm there for a year.
In the same hug?
Yeah. After a while, I stand up and I straighten up and I say, wow, thank you, that felt good. He says, well, can I show you around? And I say, sure. So he shows me around the Holy City, and we run into Martin Luther. And he shakes my hand vigorously and speaks in this awesome German accent. And we stand there and talk for, 15 minutes about justification by faith alone. And I feel like I just got a PhD in theology talking to Martin Luther. And so we say goodbye to him, keep walking. And we walk through Elizabeth Elliot's neighborhood. Do you know who Elizabeth Elliot was? Okay. And she's there on her front porch reading a magazine. And we wave and she waves. And she says, Ray, you got time for tea? And Jesus says, go for it. So I stop in and I sit with her on the porch and we have tea and she tells me her story and it's amazing. And she says, by the way, I don't know if you got the memo yet, but the martyrs in China are inviting us all to a huge party this afternoon. They're throwing a party for the rest of us. They are so happy, so healed, and it is going to be a blast. You want to go? Let's go to China. And heck yeah. And then she says, and after that, Billy and Ruth Graham are inviting us for a cookout over in North Carolina. You want to go to North Carolina after that? Yeah. Yeah. And so maybe being gathered to my fathers and mothers and brothers and sisters, maybe it'll be like that, except way, way better. So your death and mine will be a glorious act of obedience to his gracious command. We will be released from this life, and we will be gathered to the most glorious human beings imaginable. And every single one of them will like you. Imagine that.
Ed has got a mic. Have any of you any questions you would like to ask our brother Ray here? No topic is off the table? Anything at all?
Well, there might be a few.
Well, you can filter them. One over here, yeah.
Hello. I wanted to ask you for advice on dealing with the sin of laziness and procrastination, like in ministry and just general work and things like that.
Oh, wow. What a great question. Thank you. Here's the question I'm asking in my mind. We get demotivated and depleted and fed up, and we enter into avoidance and so forth. If we feel like we've been stuck with a job, jobs are a form of death. What if we had a sense of calling? What if whatever the task and the domain of ministry I'm involved in right now, what if it starts feeling like this is directly from the hand of the risen Jesus himself? In fact, if he were here, this is what he would be doing. It's not beneath him. What if it began to feel like that? That would be alluring. May I recommend a book? Does the name Os Guinness ring a bell? Okay, Os. He's actually related to the brewery.
Yeah.
Yeah. He wrote a book called The Call. It's one of the best books. I just finished it a few weeks ago. I needed it. I recommend Os Guinness, The Call. Okay, every single one of us must, M-U-S-T, must believe this. The call that God has put upon you is so significant. Through you, he will reach the entire body of the elect from now until the second coming of Christ through your ministry. You are absolutely in the plan and purpose of God. You are essential. That's why you're here. If you weren't essential, you wouldn't be here. But you are who you are, where you are, when you are, and your very genetic makeup. It's right there in Psalm 139. Your very genetic makeup was designed by the Creator's Redeemer God for your mission in life, the call he's put upon you. Let's think short term, the last 1,000 years. Your ancestors, their experiences, their very DNA was coded by God for many purposes, but one purpose was to funnel down historically to you. Your foundational, God created you. Now, of course, we all have layers of complication called sin, right? But your foundational, God created you is not a problem, but a strategy. And whatever God has called you to do for him, for his glory, the significance of it is defined at that level. It's not a job. It's a calling. So I don't know. How does that strike you?
Thank you. Should I say
Gosh,
something?
what a great question, right?
Thank you.
Okay, you get the MVP award of this act. Do you guys have MVP awards?
I don't know what that is, no.
What? Most valuable player, like American football.
Oh. What's American football? I know.
What?
Well, I call American football Nancy boy football because you have. Sorry, I'm married American. No. Because you dress up in a costume to go out and play.
Anyone for another question?
Another question. Another question. Yes. Over here.
For a lot of people who are in ministry, where burnout is very much a reality, I'm wondering if you could give us, I'm going to restrict you here, maybe 3 tips on just dealing with burnout in ministry.
It's very real. Thank you so much. Okay, 3 tips. 1, you must have 1 or 2 other men in your city with whom you meet on a regular basis to open up your hearts and talk about what's really going on and how you're not doing well and what's difficult and what you hate about your life, and pray for each other. James 5:16, therefore confess your sins to one another and pray for one another that you may be healed. That's a promise. Healing awaits you at a deep level of your being in that kind of honest brotherhood with trusted friends who will support you and pray for you. And you all open your veins and bleed together. Transparency is rejuvenating. Number 2, give yourself permission to have fun. I'm serious. Now, you're not going to like this, and it's okay. I totally get it. You don't like American football? Well, you're not going to like this about me either. I hunt every fall. Like
Sort of hunting.
yeah. Why do I do that? Because it's therapeutic. I get out in the woods. I get away from a screen. I walk in the fields. I sit in a tree stand. I watch the woods wake up in the morning from before light, before dawn. And I walk out several hours later feeling like a new man. The sheer exteriority of God's creation is uplifting to us. We need to get out into grandeur. And I also feed people who can't afford much meat. So just. But secondly, give yourself permission to have fun, and then make that a part of your life on a regular basis. Only God can hold it all together all the time. Oh, one other thing I find renewing, 3rd tip. This might not work for you. I read biographies of Christians I respect, and I see what they went through. For example, I read one recently of Thomas Cranmer, who was burned to death in 1556. His whole life was unimaginably difficult under Henry VIII. And this precious man, in weakness and at times in failure, kept going. And I find it uplifting to see what my brothers and sisters have been through in other times and other places. And it kind of puts new heart into me. Yeah. But that, I don't know if that works for you, but
That's helpful.
yeah. Thank you for asking.
Over here and here. Go ahead.
On the back of the burnout question, how do we maintain a good boundary while serving in the ministry? What to take on and what not to take on? 2 tips, please.
My deer rifle has messed with my right ear. I'm serious. And sounds sometimes are mushy.
Could you try that one more time, brother?
On the back of the burnout question,
Yes.
what is a good boundary on what load to take on and what not to take on?
What's a good
Thank
boundary?
you. Yeah.
What to take on, what not to take on?
Seriously,
Thank
when I was a younger Christian, I just thought anybody who kept the Sabbath was stuck in the past and so a fuddy-duddy and so forth. Actually, the longer I live, I think it's a great idea.
Funny that.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah, that is God's boundary. Now, here's the striking thing about that. In the other creation accounts of the ancient Near East, it was only the kings who were the image of God, not the common people. The Bible comes along and democratizes the image of God. Everybody, every human being is in the image of God. And in the other creation accounts, we were created to be the drudges for the lesser gods. The higher gods were giving the lesser gods a bunch of jobs they didn't want to do. So the lesser gods created us to do their dirty work for them. We were created just to be slaves. The Bible comes along and says, you're not a slave. You're in the image of God, in the likeness of God, and you're not supposed to work all the time. God himself doesn't work all the time. So you can give yourself permission and give yourself, because God has given you the dignity of kicking up your heels one day a week and releasing all burdens to him. Now, the Pharisees turned even the Sabbath. Now, we are so flawed. We find a way even to spoil happy things. They turned it into a new kind of drudgery. So watch that tendency in yourself. The more you love Jesus and the more devoted you are, that dark side can appear, even in Christian devotion. For example, reading the Bible. I figured out, if I find a way to read the Bible that I actually enjoy, I'll do it. If I don't enjoy it, I won't do it. It doesn't matter how right it is. And keeping the Sabbath, find a way to keep the Sabbath that is truly sabbatical, true to the integrity and nature of the Sabbath, that you enjoy. And such that you end the day just praising and thanking God's holy name for his goodness to you, then you're ready for the next day. That's a great question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
2 more over here.
I feel like you're a very encouraging person, so thank you. And I was just wondering, do you have any, can you hear me? Okay. Do you have any encouragement or wisdom for someone who feels called to ministry, but is worried about like abusing power or like messing it up or failing?
Get that?
Yeah. We're all in a lot of upheaval about that very issue right now, aren't we? It's being rethought at a deep level. By worried about abuses of power, meaning worried about becoming exposed to abusive people?
No, like worried about yourself abusing.
Okay,
Or you become,
okay. Thank you for asking that. That's really important. One thought. How do I walk into a room? What happens between my 2 ears when I walk into a room and other people are there? If we're all in covenant together, and we are, I believe I literally owe every person in that room my best in that moment, whatever that might look like. I can't hold back, not with integrity. Can't hold back, play it safe, perceive them through the lens of cost-benefit analysis. I want to walk in and give myself away and I owe them my best by God's grace for His glory. Now, I don't always live with that mentality, but that is where I want to live mentally, with that understanding. And I think to the degree that I walk into the room with that sense of privilege and call and obligation and so forth, I will tend to be more a giver than a taker. Even if I'm then given by a congregation or by a vestry or a session, a position of responsibility, with that goes legitimate empowerment. I'll be positioned, at least mentally and attitudinally, to deploy that office, that ministry, and that power in a way that has something of the cross about it. Because I'm thinking, I'm here for them. They're not here for me. Yeah, thank you. That's a profound question.
And we'll go for the last question.
Just want to say, first and foremost, thank you, Ray, for being here. Just learned a lot from you already. And I'm going to be a bit cheeky and ask for a preview of the book in technicalities. So essentially, how to serve when you yourself are at rock bottom.
I'm not sure I understand.
How do you serve, we're looking for a preview of the book. How do you serve yourself when you are at rock bottom yourself?
Oh, I see.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How to serve others when you're at rock
How
bottom.
do you serve others, not yourself? That came out wrong.
Okay.
Big difference there, isn't there? Yes. Heard that wrong. I've got the hearing problem. Okay.
Well, I don't see being at rock bottom as a disadvantage for service. I see it as actually the best position for service. Everybody is at rock bottom. Some of us think we aren't and are acting out this sort of role play as if we were in that mushy middle. People who are really good at that role play tend to run the world. They're very successful, tend to be rich and powerful. But it is, after all, bluff. It's a lie. When, in God's mercy, He doesn't allow us to role play anymore and everything falls apart, I believe that's when our real ministries finally began. And people who are also fed up with role playing and are ready for reality with Christ and with one another, suddenly you discover they're all over, they're all around, and you got a ministry. And you know what else you have? A whole bunch of new friends, and happiness you didn't even know was real, fruitfulness that the Holy Spirit grants. A lot of joys. Did I even answer your question? Oh, well, you're very kind.
Listen, I'm conscious of our time. Brother, your hand's up. Could you come up afterwards and ask that one-to-one? But because it's dinner time now, thank you for this conversation, for revealing a little bit more of yourself.
I want to thank y'all
Yeah.
for
All y'all.
Yeah, all y'all.
All y'all.
For loving and serving the Lord, putting him first when it's not easy, believing the gospel when your heart is sad, and just keeping on and keeping on and keeping on. Way to go, guys.
Thank you. Could you...